Hawks, Hoops, Tawk, and Squawk. A salute to Chet the Jet Walker, who just recently transitioned to the Hoops heavens to soar amongst the basketball guys. Just happened last night. I'm on social media, and that was like the first thing I saw when I went on social media. I was like, damn, Chet the Jet, because I was literally just talking about Chet like amongst some of the older Hoops fans. Like, I'm in a lot of the groups like dedicated towards the NBA heydays, like the Wilt Chamberlain days in the 70s and the 80s. I love talking amongst the old school fans, and we was just talking about Chet Walker because we was talking about that great 1966-67 Philadelphia 76ers NBA World Championship team. Now, Chet Walker was even an underrated player on that team. When you think of that team, of course, everybody thinks Wilt, then Hal Greer, then Billy Cunningham. But Chet Walker was the third leading scorer on that 67 team behind Wilt and Hal Greer. Wilt averaged 24.1, Greer 22.1. Chet Walker averaged 19.3, which was his career high as a 76er that year. He made his second All-Star appearance, but Chet Walker was really the third guy. Chet Walker was to the 67 Sixers team when Andrew Toney was to the 83 Sixers team. They both were the third leading scorer, and they both averaged 19 points on those respective championship teams and were all-stars. So yeah, like a lot of the younger fans, they don't know about Chet Walker. And even some of the older fans, when you think of Chet Walker, you think of his Chicago Bulls days. And speaking of that trade that sent Chet Walker to Chicago for Jim Washington in 1969. No disrespect, Jim Washington was a great player, but he was no Chet the Jet. I think Chet Walker on those early 76ers teams, like 70, 71, 72, there wouldn't have been that 9 and 73 disaster of 72, 73 if Chet Walker's on that team. Because Chet Walker was, at that time, he was about 32, 33, so he was still an all-star that year. He averaged almost just under 20 points a game that year. It was an all-star in 72, 73. And the Bulls were a good team that year, 51-31, and lost to the Lakers in the Western Conference semifinals. You know, those were the Lakers teams that had Wilt, West. Lakers were just coming off of their historic championship season. So, you know, that was an epic series. Two Sixer champions going at it with their new team. But the trade that sent Chet the Chicago Bulls for Jim Washington, that was like, that kind of signaled the real downfall of the Sixers. A lot of people think it started with the Wilt trade, but like I said plenty of times before, Wilt wasn't staying in Philly past 1968. You know, he would have left. So it's either you trade him or you get nothing for him. So Sixers did the smart thing and made that trade, but the Chet Walker trade kind of signaled the downfall because they went from 55-27 So I think the next year 42 and 40. So yeah, like a whole 13 game drop off. Chet on those early 76ers teams would have made a difference. There's the thing about Chet Walker. He was drafted by the then Syracuse Nationals in 1962. That was the last draft pick of the franchise until they moved to Philly the following year in 1963. So Chet Walker was the last Syracuse Nationals draft choice. You know, his rookie year averaged just over 12 points a game. His second year, which was the first season of the 76ers, he averaged 17.3 points, 10.3 rebounds. It was an all-star along with Hal Greer. I think those 2 years, because Dolph Schayes, he only played in, 24 games that year. So he, like at that time, he was the 76ers first coach. So yeah, Chet Walker was an all-star the team's first season in Philadelphia. Then the following year, you know, Wilt Chamberlain's traded back to the Sixers. Lou Jackson's on the scene. Lou Jackson was an all-star as a rookie. So between the additions of Wilt and Lou Jackson, Chet Walker's numbers dipped down to just 13 points a game. 13.2. He was like 6 in scoring that year. You had Wilt, Hal Greer, Lou Jackson, Paul Newman was traded for Wilt. So really after all, Chet was 5th in scoring behind Wilt, Greer, Lou Jackson, and Larry Costello, who was an all-star that year. So those early 76ers teams, especially in 65, that 65 team that lost that game 7, Havlicek stole the ball. If the Sixers had shot better that game, we could have won that series. You know, that 65 Celtics team was a great Celtics team, but if the Sixers had just made a couple more shots, could have won that series. But all right, the following year, 65-66, this is when Billy Cunningham and Wally Jones joined the Sixsationals. You know, that's the year we won our first of 3 straight Eastern Division championships. Wilt's first full season, wins his 7th straight scoring title, another rebound crown, and his 2nd MVP award. That is a great team. Chet Walker, 15.3 points, 8 rebounds. Played in all 80 games. Was again a 3rd leading scorer behind Wilt and Hal Greer, and also joined them on the All-Star team, the Eastern Division All-Star team. That's the first original 76ers trio, Wilt, Hal Greer, and Chet Walker. That's the original 76ers trio. You know, and that 67 championship team proves it. That's when Chet averaged the 76er high, 19.3, his 3rd All-Star appearance, 8.1 rebounds, appeared in all 81 games. In the playoffs, stepped his game up to 21.7 points, averaged 7.6 rebounds. You go back, look at that series against Boston, when they finally dethroned Boston, and the championship round against the San Francisco Warriors, Philadelphia's former basketball team. Chet was that guy on a lot of those teams. I mean, a lot of those games during that finals run. . Yeah, during that finals run, the Boston series, Chet averaged 20.6 points. During the 5-game series against Boston. And then a clincher, the championship clincher, that Philly won 125 to 122. Chet Walker had 20 points, 7 rebounds. There was a couple games, I think, where he actually led the team in scoring during that finals run. But nonetheless, though, Chet Walker, great, you know what I mean, forward. Him, Lou Jackson, and Wilt Chamberlain, they make up one of the greatest front lines in league history. Like, that's a hell of a front court. Just Wilt and Lou Jackson alone. You know what I mean? 2 beasts. Remember, Lou Jackson was originally a center, but because of Wilt, he became the game's first true power forward. He game changed. He really originated the power forward position. Remember, before then, they called him a shooting forward and a big forward. You know, but Lou Jackson changed all that. That's a great front line. And like I said, when you talk about those teams from 65, 66, 66, 67, and 67, 68, that should have been a 3-peat dynasty. But like I said, I'm going to get to that video because I've seen more and more old school hoops fans talking about those teams and how with the right dynamics, they would have won a couple more titles. 66 and 68 are the biggest what-ifs in NBA history. You know, and that was a great 6-player tandem. The starters, Wally Jones, Hal Greer, Chet Walker, Lou Jackson, Wilt Chamberlain, and Billy Cunningham as your 6th man. And, you know, this is before the 6-man award became a thing. But if you had the 6th man of the year award back then, Billy Cunningham definitely would have won it in 67 and 68. You know, and at that point, it was like a big 4. Wilt, Hal Greer, Chet Walker, and Billy Cunningham. Now, once Wilt was traded, Billy Cunningham really became the best player. Because in 67, 68, Billy Cunningham became the 3rd leading scorer. It was at that point where Billy C surpassed Chet Walker as the team's 3rd best player. At that time, it was Wilt, Hal Greer, and Billy C was the new trio. And Chet Walker was kind of that 4th guy. Chet Walker on that team is what Tobias Harris should have been on the 22-23 Sixers team. But, you know, we ain't even going to get into all that. That's just blasphemy right there to compare Chet the Jet to that crumble cookie. I said what I said. But it's a shame Billy C, he got hurt in the division semifinals against the Knicks. That's one of the main reasons the Sixers didn't repeat that year. But, you know, once Wilt was traded, Billy Cunningham became the team's best player. That 68-69 team, that's another what-if team because Lou Jackson doesn't get hurt. Lou Jackson only appeared in 25 games that year with average 14.4 points, 11.4 boards. Lou Jackson doesn't get hurt. That team wins 60-some games easy. You know, who knows? I mean, the great Bill Russell, him not going out with a championship would be, that just wouldn't sit right. You know, so I'm not saying that 6-10 wins the championship, but they don't go out in no division semis. They at least get to the division finals. But anyway, that's the year Billy Cunningham made his first of 4 NBA All-Star appearances, averaged 24.8 and just under 13 rebounds. Billy C really, at that point, Billy Cunningham was a top 5 player. You know what I mean? Top 10, no doubt. Like, that was prime Billy Cunningham. You know, he doesn't get enough praise either while we're talking about one of the greatest players and the greatest coach in franchise history. You know, Billy C just turned 81 the other day. And now this is the time for the Sixers organization to reach out and start bringing some of these legends out for a game. You know what I mean? So the younger fans get to know more about, you know what I mean, the past franchise greats. It's like the younger fans don't respect or appreciate the team history the way us older fans do. No matter how much you might love today's team and today's players, it will never take away that love and admiration you have for the old school. But a lot of these younger fans don't hold those values, and these organizations play a part in that by not honoring their legends the way they should. Like, Chet Walker's number 25 should have been retired. And that's not saying that players couldn't still wear that number, but just show Chet Walker the respect he deserved by retiring his number 25. You know what I mean? That should have been done. And Andrew Toney's number 22 should have been done. And I had reached out to the Sixers organization before about honoring Tony and Chet Walker, but, you know, I'm not even going to get into this organization and the dumb shit they do. You know, because they don't give a shit about team history. Like I said, a lot of the people in the organization that have Darryl Dawkins as a top 10 Sixer. When I was talking to somebody that works in the organization and they talking about if anybody deserves to have their number retired, it's Dawk. You know what I mean? I told them, I'll talk to you later. You know, you never talk to that person again. I love Dawk. And I've said that on more than one occasion. Me and Dawk used to chop it up all the time. Like, and really, he's one of my favorite all-time Sixers. You know what I mean? But you're not going to retire his number over a Chet Walker. He's more popular than Chet and even Andrew Toney, no doubt. But we're talking about contributions. And I love Dawk, and I'm going to dedicate a video to him. And I'm going to break down everything thoroughly. But right now, this is about Chet Walker and the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, this is the time, and I think they will, to finally honor him. You know what I mean? By retiring his number 25 to the rafters. Because, like I said, you think Andrew Toney's underrated and not talked about enough. You never ever hear about Chet Walker, especially as a 76er. You only really hear about him from his time in the 70s when he was with the Chicago Bulls. Like I said, those Bulls teams had some good teams in the early to mid 70s when Chet was there. But his best team success came in Philadelphia. You know what I mean? He's one of the greatest all-time championship teams. Like I said, and as time goes on, because it's 57 years now since that team won. So, you know, as the generations get younger and younger, those generations become more and more forgotten. You know how you always see stats where it says since 1980 or since NBA merger, you know what I mean? And like I told people that got offended, I said they're doing that is really paying homage to Wilt because they know Wilt's records will never be touched. That's why they always include like the NBA merger because Wilt was out of the league by then. You know what I mean? So I don't really take offense to that. To me, they know those records are damn near untouchable. Shit, after all these years. But yeah, I know, shout out to my Chicago Bulls Nation fam. You know, because the real OG Bulls fans, they appreciate Chet Walker because other than the Jordan era and the little brief Derrick Rose era, when the Bulls were doing their thing, those Chet Walker teams in the 70s, you had Norm Van Lier, Bob Love, you know what I mean, Chet Walker, like those Bulls had some good teams, but you know, out west at that time, you had the Lakers with Wilt and West, you had the Bucks, you know what I mean, with Kareem and Oscar. So, if anything, the Bulls, and this was back when the Bulls were a Western Conference team. But, you know what I mean, those Chicago teams, they had some good players. You know, you had Jerry Sloan, who everybody knows as the Malone and Stockton Utah Jazz teams. Former Sixer Bob Weiss was also on that team. Like I said, they had some good squads out there under head coach Dick Mather. But those are really the only Bulls eras that had good teams. You know, when you think of the Bulls, the only thing you really think about for real, is the 90s dynasty teams. And rightfully so, but in Bulls history, like I said, you have the little brief Derrick Rose run. And during that time, everybody thought the Bulls was going to get a couple titles. You know, but then you had the squad of the early to mid 70s with Chet Walker. But yeah. Yeah, it'd be nice if the Bulls honor him too. I know next season they'll pay homage in some way. But that'd be nice, you know what I mean, to retire his number out there too. You know, that'd be... But the Sixers definitely need to do that. The Sixers also need to take a page out of the Phillies book and do a Wall of Fame. Now, I think they have one, but it ain't really official. You don't hear no mention of it or nothing. But they need to get a real Sixer Hall of Fame or something going and have more events where these legends come out. Like I say, because a lot of Sixer legends are still around, and a lot of the old timers, you want to come back and honor them now. Because like I said, not too long ago, I was just talking with some people about pitching, you know what I mean, something about the organization bringing back Chet and retiring his number, because he's one of the last few around from them Wilt days. So it's just like, wow, when I heard the news, I kind of was taken back a little bit. And I was like, man, this is just why we were just having this discussion. Because now, if you watch my earlier videos, when I did the Sixsational 13, when I named the 13 greatest players in franchise history, Chet Walker is in there. You know, Chet Walker's in there. Like I said, because you can't, if you don't have him in the top 10, all right. You know what I mean? You can rank him how you rank him, but if you have him outside of your top 13, then you need some serious history lessons on the team. You need some serious history lessons. You know, because the guy was great. And it's a shame, like, you can't find them old games on YouTube or whatever. Like, you might find clips of old Celtic games from that era. The only Sixer game from that era they show is, ironically, the Game 4 loss to Boston in '67. That's the only piece of a game from that era that you can really find anywhere. Everything else is just like clips and shit like that. Now, my uncle years ago, he had all of the old games on tape. That's how I was able to see them, but I don't know what happened to his collection. And I was always trying to get a hold of it, but because we could have did some great things with that. But I know, but on social media or whatever, YouTube, you can't find no games from that era. Like I said, everybody talks about Sixers Celtics in that era, but we had some good games against Big O and the Cincinnati Royals too around that time. 65, 67. You know, that Sixers Knicks series, 68 when Billy C got hurt. I remember watching some of them old games and how intense they were. But, you know, all you can really go by is highlights. And that's another reason why I like being in the old school groups, chatting with the old timers. You know what I mean? Even though a lot of them, too, get caught up with today's talk and all that who's the GOAT and what player would and wouldn't exceed and what era and all of that, instead of just appreciating the game and all of the different eras. You know, but anyway, shout out to Chet Walker. You know what I mean? Shout out to his family. I mean, 84, lived a nice long life. He was just inducted into the Hall of Fame of 12 years ago now, but it doesn't seem like it was that long ago. It was during the Sixers' 50th anniversary season when he got inducted. And I remember they did bring him out around that time too. And that was when I really first started putting it out there that he's a forgotten, underrated legend and they need to retire his number. But you know, at that time, it was like, at that point, they was really focusing on getting AI up there. Because they knew AI wasn't coming back, but he hadn't announced his retirement yet. So at that point, everybody knew AI was the next guy that needed to go in the rafters. You know what I mean? Then after that, they finally acknowledged Dolph Shades after so many years. When Dolph Shades should have been the first number retired by the organization. You know what I mean? Or one of the first guys. I understand how Graham and Billy C being the first ones because they were the actual first 76er players to retire. Well, nah, not really Wilt, but Wilt's a whole different, you know what I mean, story. You know what I mean? Because of the beef he had with the organization, which, by the way, has nothing to do with him being traded. You know what I mean? I say that for the 1,000th time because everybody make like, oh, the Sixers should have never traded Will. That's where the curse began. Yeah, the curse started with something that happened with Will. You know what I mean? Because the deal between Wilt and Ike wasn't properly honored. You know what I mean? That's what led to I'm not going to say that led to the whack dynamics. That played a part in the whack dynamics. But him being traded has nothing to do with the bad luck or whatever that this organization has endured. But anyway, this was just some Hawks, Hoops, Talk, and Squawk. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. You see my admiration for the past Sixer legends. You know what I mean? I've been pitching for them, the organization, to retire. Andrew Toney down. Chet Walker deserves it more than ever. I think with his recent ascension of Hoops Heavens, you know the organization will start talking about it. And you never know. You know what I mean? Show Chet the Jet his true respect. But anyway, stay tuned for more content. Hawk out.